All right, well, today we're back to work on the new shop build out. We've gotten a lot done. We're through all of the big projects for now, but there's a couple little things we want to do before we start moving stuff in, and then get to moving stuff in, getting set up, getting organized. So the first thing we want to do is seal this place up a little bit better. So we're losing a lot of efficiency, mainly through the doors. And then also we've got a bunch of gaps for critters to get in. You know, we got ants that come in here, we got worms. We just had a giant spider on the roof. So we're never gonna seal it up completely, but we're gonna do our best to seal it up just a little bit better. So the first area is the frame, where the frame meets the concrete on the perimeter. It's a little bit rough, the concrete around the perimeter, so it's not quite even. You can see gaps and dips as you go down. And I mean, it's just pretty much anything can get in through some of these gaps. So first thing we're gonna do is caulk that up. Another thing we're gonna tackle is the doors. So when I spec'd this shop out, I didn't intend on ACing it, and then here we are with AC, and the doors are uninsulated. So fortunately, with where the sun is, they don't get too hot, but it is definitely noticeably warmer out here. And not to mention just the heat, the gaps. So you can see how much light's coming in out there, and it's not even that bright outside right now. You can see it all along the sides of the door. So that's just a massive place for air to escape and heat to get in. So that's something we need to seal up. Not to mention critters, wasps. We've got wasps starting to form in here already. So we want to get that done. So we've got stuff to insulate the door. We've got brush seals to go on to seal that up. And then we also need to get our stuff in here, figure out where we want everything to go. We still don't know yet, and we won't really know until we start putting stuff in here and kind of moving things around to see what fits best where and where we're gonna set things up, because we need to know mainly where we're gonna put all of our 240 volt stuff, the tire machine, the air compressor, the welders, the belt grinder, all of that stuff, because those are the outlets that we still need to add. Those are the outlets that we don't have yet. So I wanna be confident in where we put everything, happy with it long term before we have outlets installed. So that's a big thing we really need to get done, because the electricians will be back tomorrow to start knocking that stuff out. So we got a lot of work to do. I'm gonna quit jibber jabbering. We're gonna get to caulking up the perimeter of this building, hopefully minimize our ant superhighway problem that we've got going on here. These things start over there and just head down that way. So let's get to it. So Josue and I started siliconing up the perimeter of the building. Now, we started on different ends and we both took different approaches. So when I used to work construction, most of the caulking I did was aesthetic. It was, you know, joining two panels, so I'd tape everything up real nice and you'd have to smooth it out by finger. Now Josue was just globbing it on and just leaving the bead itself. So two different approaches. It's clear, it's supposed to dry clear, so I wasn't really too worried about it, and that's why I didn't bother taping off the floor or the wall, because first off, they both have overspray from the floor and overspray from the paint on the walls. Secondly, again, it's supposed to dry clear, so it shouldn't really matter. You shouldn't really be able to see it. I just wanted to get something down here and seal this up, because that ant superhighway is real. All right, well, it took a little longer than expected. As usual, got our silicone done. We sealed the entire perimeter. I'm sure it won't completely rid our ant problem, but at least it's nice and sealed up and watertight now. So there's still some ants. The superhighway is still up and running, but it has diminished. They're trying to get through our blockade over here. They're just getting stuck and turning around. So once this dries, we'll do some ant killer, but I've tried to kill these ants before. They were here with the other building, you know, which was open on the front. You know, there was no wall here, and they were in this section then. So silicone the door frame. This is just more for, you know, keeping everything in, sealing it up nice and tight. There was just a gap between the door frame and the actual frame for the door frame. So anyway, we got all that done. Now it is time to start moving things in here, get it roughed out and figure out where we're gonna put things. At least the main stuff that we're gonna need to move around. I just wanna see, you know, see how it looks in different positions. So we gotta lose some AC. Luckily it's not hot out today, but it's always the worst when it's nice and chilly in here and then you gotta open the doors. You're like, no. You fogged up too. So since we had to empty out the trailer to go down to clutch kickers for our competition, we had to pack even more stuff in the garage than we already had. So there's a bunch of stuff in the way of a bunch of other stuff, and it's going to require a lot of moving in and out. But we need to get everything out of here that needs to be wired into the new shop so we know where it goes. Now, one thing I really wanted to do before we put all this stuff in the new shop was to clean it all off. There's metal dust and metal shavings on just about everything, and just dust and some cobwebs and dirt and pretty much everything you can imagine. So I didn't want to take these dirty items and put them in a clean shop. I wanted to try to get this stuff at least reasonably clean before we put it in, and dirtied up the nice floors in the new clean shop. It's a fresh start. I want to take the time now and make sure that everything's nice and fresh and clean. So we get the main stuff put over here, the easy stuff, the roll stuff. So this stuff's a piece of cake to move. We just had to dig it out from behind the tires, but otherwise it all rolls. So not really a big deal there. Now, one thing that I was unsure on is where I wanted to put the welding table, the welders, and the belt grinder. So these are all things that need to get wired in, and it was a tough decision, you know, because the welders need to be able to be moved away from the table to go weld something on the car easily. So we don't want them kind of cornered in the way. We want to maximize the space that we have here. So we have kind of a big open area between the lifts and the back wall. So we're not just going to be storing things on the wall. We need to store stuff in the middle. So we had an idea to put the table in the middle, and after moving some things around, I think we settled on leaving it in the middle. So the next big monstrous thing we needed to move was the air compressor. This bin pack air compressor is an absolute beast, but it is heavy. So when we moved it from the shop into the garage, we put it on these dollies, screwed it to the dollies, and left it on the dollies because we knew we'd be moving it back into the shop as soon as the shop was done. Now, moving it, not a problem. Again, it has wheels like the other stuff. Getting it off the dollies, a little bit trickier. We tried a couple methods. We ended up having to step it down 2 or 3 times. I'd have my girlfriend Chrissy help as a third person. It's a very top-heavy unit, and it's not something you want to drop on yourself. All right, well, after a lot of messing around and moving stuff around, since now's the time to do it, we got everything placed where we want it, and we know where everything else is going to go that's going to come in here. So we switched our plan a little bit. I originally intended on having the air compressor and the tire machine in this back corner. I don't know why, but that was just my plan. But we realized we've got these outlets here. We've got a good spot here. What we're gonna do is put the big wood bench here, put our cutting tools on it, like the cold cut saw, the bandsaw, you know, hand grinders, all of that cutting messy stuff, and then put the belt grinder next to it. And then we'll also have like the press brake, drill press, that kind of stuff will all go in this corner. So that way, this will be kind of the messy corner. We've got all these outlets here anyway. So anyway, that was the plan. We've got the window if we need to do any ventilation. That there, tire machine, air compressor there. So with all that nailed down, the electrician came in and got to work. So they've got most of the conduit ran. So we got our box there for the tire machine. The air compressor's wired in. He added a run of conduit down this way. So we have 2 more 120 volt outlets on this wall. I wanted to make sure we had one close to the door, you know, if we needed to plug in the pressure washer or the vacuum to clean a car or anything like that. So those are there. Conduits ran mostly to the lift. He's just got to finish that up, wire up the lift. We're also going to be adding a 240 volt outlet on each lift. Just a nice good place close by the door to have them. And it's really convenient for if you're tack welding something on a car. You know, if I'm fabbing up an exhaust or something, being able to plug the welder in right there. Now I have to run a cord, do my tacking, and then move on. So pretty hyped about that. We shouldn't want for any outlets. We tried to plan this out as best we could. I'm really happy with the rough layout we've come up with. So they're gone for the day. So we're gonna dive into our projects, which are finishing up our door plans, or starting and finishing our door plans. So we need to insulate them and we need to get these brush seals in. So for insulation, we have this stuff. So it seems pretty common. I used very similar, mostly the same thing for my garage door. And while it doesn't seem like much, it definitely made a big difference. That door gets absolutely blasted by the sun. And with the insulation, it's still warm by the door, but if you put your hand behind the insulation, it'll literally burn your hand. It gets so hot. So it should do plenty well, especially since these doors don't get a lot of direct sunlight. I think that'll be kind of the cherry on top for sealing up this place. So we got spray adhesive. We got a roll, it's a 4-foot roll. We've got 8x8 and 12 by 12 doors. Should be pretty simple. Shouldn't have any odd sizes or shapes to cut, but we'll see. You know how that goes. So enough jibber jabber, let's get to work. So we started on the smallest door just because it's the easiest one and the least important, you know, just to get a feel for it, see how the spray adhesive works, see how the insulation fits up, all of that good stuff. So pretty simple again, since this is a 4-foot roll and an 8-foot door, we essentially need 2 pieces stacked on top of each other. So we measured it out. It was kind of a debate between whether we wanted to tuck it in under the rails or leave it on top, you know, butt it up to the edges. So we had a little bit of room. There's a little bit of flex in the door. So we decided to try to tuck it under just to keep it nice and full and clean and not have any jagged edges that you would see. So once we got it cut out, we started spraying our spray adhesive. So you spray it on the door and on the insulation itself, so both sides, and the stuff tacks up pretty quick. So by the time you end up spraying these 2 big pieces, it's time to go ahead and start getting it on. So we get it in place, we get it squished down, it seems to be holding pretty well. So then we move on to the other one. Now this one's obviously going to be a little trickier, it's a little bit taller, a little bit higher up, but all in all, not too bad. This door went together pretty easy. So with those on, one thing we want to do is tape up the seams. So we have this aluminum tape. They use this a lot for HVAC stuff. So this stuff works really well and kind of matches and suits the insulation material. So we get a tape line across the middle to attach the 2 pieces, and then a tape line on the top as well, just to hold everything together. And now all that's left is to test the door, see if it rolls up. Rolls up smoother. Literally. So now that we know that everything's going to work like we thought it would, it's time to start on the big doors. Now, these doors are not only bigger, but they need it more. We're in that area more frequently working on the lifts, and these get a lot more sunlight than the back door does. So we wanted to make sure that we got these right. Now, even though these are both roll-up doors, there's a little bit of difference. So we couldn't really tuck it under the lip like we wanted to on this door. It was so tight that once you got the adhesive on there, it didn't want to go in. And trying to get it in and get it straight, we put a little crease on it. Of course, the door that we're going to see the most, we put a crease on it. So we didn't want to do that again. So we tried a little bit harder this time to make sure that we got it dead straight before we stuck it. It's like essentially putting a 4-foot by 12-foot sticker on. It's the same process. You really have to get one end on and work it across. If you try to, you know, lift it up and down as you go along, it doesn't work. It does not work, I can tell you that much. So not too bad of a process. It's really a pretty simple job to do this. It's definitely not hard, but it does have its challenges. So we got our tape lines on the middle and the bottom, and then we move on to the hardest piece, which is the top piece. So you need 2 people to do this. So we've got the ladder, we've got the scissor lift, and again, you've got a quick working time with this spray adhesive. You don't have time to kind of dilly-dally and wait around. You got to be set up, ready to go, get the adhesive on, and then get it up there and get it fitted in place. So we get that last one on. Fortunately, the top 2 pieces went on a lot smoother than the easiest piece at the bottom. We got them nice and straight, nice tight gaps, no wrinkles. It's kind of ironic how that works. The easiest one to put on is the ugliest one. Maybe we'll redo it at some point, but this is really kind of a proof of concept. I want to see how well this works, how well it holds up. We shouldn't be opening the doors a ton, but it should help a lot to have something as opposed to just a thin steel door. All right, well, last night we got the doors 90% done. We did run out of aluminum tape. So of course this side, which ended up with the biggest gaps because the cut line kind of got crooked as we went down, since you're measuring off the original one, our most crooked lines, we weren't able to tape up and get them out of sight, out of mind immediately. The other ones where we had tape, we had pretty good gaps all the way through. But we need to get that taped up. The electricians came back today and got a ton done. So pretty much everything's done. Pretty exciting little small thing that nobody probably cares about but me. We switched the plug for the belt grinder and the tire machine to this 30 amp plug, which is way better suited for them. So they need 30 amps. So before I had this style plug on everything. This is like the kind of standard welder style plug, but this is a 50 amp plug. And this on the small cord from the belt grinder and the tire machine, it never clamped on it right, and it would try to kind of pull the wires out, and it just always felt janky and dinky. It's always bothered me. So pretty hyped to have switched to that style for both the tire machine and the belt grinder. It's the little things, but there's still a couple things left for the electricians that they're gonna do day after tomorrow. They gotta finish up that outlet for the tire machine. You just get a cover plate on it. Finish the wires out to a light for there and drop down for the welding table. They've got a pretty cool idea on that that I really like and should help a lot with planning around building the loft. I was kind of worried about how that would go, you know, trying to make sure it's not in the way of the loft that we haven't built yet. But Doug came up with a good plan on that, so I'm excited to see how that turns out. But we've got outlets down this wall now, which is an important thing that we needed. We've also got a 120 volt plug on the lift now, so we're gonna put a wire reel on the lift. So they'll have a cord right in between the two lifts to drag out to anything you need to do. And then we've got our welder plugs on the lift now too. So now we've got 240 volt outlets for the welders all the way up here. So really happy with how the electricals turned out. It is pretty much done, especially since I added a couple things. They worked fast. Like, they got a lot done really quickly. So I'm jibber jabbering, aren't I? Me and Osway are gonna finish up our projects, one of which being installing our brush seals. So I'll show you how these go on the door, but we've got to get these mounted outside. They're gonna basically butt up against the door and allow it to take up all the gaps where the door is corrugated and hopefully keep wasps and air, more importantly, out. I don't know if wasps like cold weather or what, but you just see them. They just fly right in here. They're trying to make this place our home. We're trying to be bug-free. This is a bug-free zone. So we need to get those up. We need to finish taping, and we've got our air hardline kit. So I'm excited to get this installed. So I'm gonna quit jibber jabbering. We're gonna get back to work, get these things taped up, get the brush seals on, yada yada. So starting on the brush seals, these actually were much simpler than I anticipated. I was worried that they would end up having to land on the flashing that was there, and we'd have to unscrew the flashing and screw it in between them, but it worked out perfect to where the gap behind the flashing on the frame for the door was the perfect thickness left to put the brush seals. So I decided to go with 3-inch 45-degree brush seals on the sides and then just 3-inch straight at the top. I wanted to make sure that whatever we got was long enough to get good coverage and good grab against the door and fully seal this off. So they actually ended up being pretty much perfect. They really fit just right. I mean, they are trimmed to fit, so they were a touch long here and there, but I mean, I'm talking a 1/16 of an inch that we had to trim. So I was really happy with how all this went together. You know, some things you get and you end up having to do a ton of modification and tinkering and all this stuff, but these went together nicely. So this is a good comparison of how much of a difference these make. So one door with, one door without, you could see all the light coming through the holes in the perimeter and all the light blasting in at the top. So we know they work, we know they're gonna do the job, we know they seal, we know they fit right. So now we just got to keep forging ahead and get the other doors finished up. So now that it's like any project, once you've done one, you have the process pretty nailed down and it's easy to knock out the other ones. They go much, much quicker. We also decided to use the scissor lift for the whole of the second door. I tried to get away with using the ladder on the first door, and as we got to the top, I realized, why don't I just bring the scissor lift out here? This is gonna make it way easier. It was a little tricky because the driveway has a slope to it and it did not like that, so we had to kind of back in some spots. Otherwise, it would just freak out and lock you out of going up and down. But the next door went pretty quick, and then once that one was all finished up, we moved on to the back door. This door was a little bit tighter than the others, so these were a touch long, but they worked, and they're gonna get the job done. So you can see how the brush seal works. It just fills in all of those gaps in the corrugated door, but while still allowing you to roll the door up and down without losing that seal. So before Ben left, we needed to move this tire machine. Now, the compressor is probably the same weight or similar weight, but the tire machine, the easiest way to get it on dollies is to lift it up. So we needed the extra muscle, get it lifted up, get it on the dollies, get it rolled in, and then get it in place. Now, it's pretty important how this is placed because it has a lot of articulation. This tire machine has the power arm and the tilt back head, so we needed to make sure that those things could all articulate, but while taking up the least space possible. So with that done, I wanted to go ahead and finish some of the heavy moving. You know, we have a lot of small stuff to move over. We've got organization stuff we need to set up before we do that, but I wanted to get at least the heavy, big, bulky items over and out of the way, so that way we could really see how the space was going to pan out with everything in it. So we got the vet pushed in, and then we got the big giant monstrosity of a wooden workbench pushed in. So this actually came with the house, came with the old shop, and I really want to rebuild it just to make something look a little bit nicer and more modern and newer to kind of match everything else in the shop, as silly as that is, because this is a really solid workbench. But for right now, we need workspaces, we need worktops. That is one thing we are absolutely lacking when it comes to working in the shop, is just having nowhere to put stuff, which leads to clutter, and I hate clutter. All right, we got a bunch of our main initial stuff, our heavy stuff, moved over here and roughly placed. The brush seals came out really good. We got those fully finished up, and boy, what a difference that made. One, it's definitely holding temperature even better than before, but two, check out the light. No light. Not an ounce of light shining through those doors now. So that's a huge improvement. Now another cool thing, like kind of an added bonus on top of the functionality of them, is that it looks a lot better. It just kind of frames the door in more. It makes it look a lot more complete, you know? Especially once we had this one on, it was really noticeable that this one just seems so unfinished because of all those gaps. So it just makes it feel like the door is better finished and framed out. So really happy with that. Really glad we got that knocked out. That's one of those projects, if we didn't do it before we kind of got settled into the shop and moving and grooving with projects and stuff, we probably never would have got to it, or at least it would have stayed by the wayside for a long time. And I think it's going to make a big difference in temperature. It seems like it already has, along with the insulation and keeping the wasps and bugs out of here. We also got the tire machine placed in its corner. Worked out really well. We had measured kind of roughly based off the corner in the garage to see how far to put this, to see how much room we needed here, and it all panned out pretty perfect. We got this thing just where it needs to be. Since this head tilts back, you got to account for that, and then all the little odds and ends can articulate fully without slamming into anything. So pretty pumped on that. Now, speaking of tire machine, one of the main reasons we needed to get it in here is because we needed to know where we needed the outlet for our air, because we were going to be installing our hardline setup. So we're going to be plumbing hard lines throughout the whole shop, so that way pretty much every potential area that could need air will have air without dragging an air hose, you know, from the compressor all the way up, or having to unhook something, hook something else in. I want to make sure every last thing has air. We're going a little bit overboard. We're going to have a lot of drops of air stations, but it'll be worth it in the end. A little bit extra time now. So we're gonna start at the compressor, see how far we can get, see how much hose we have. So enough jibber jabber, let's get back to work. So this piping is essentially a flexible hard piping. So it's plastic on the inside, plastic on the outside, but then it has an aluminum core, which makes it able to handle all the pressure. So this handles up to 200 PSI, which is more than we're ever gonna need. So the system's pretty cool. So it's basically like if you've ever worked with a PTFE AN hose, kind of similar, but a lot easier. You basically remount the hose and cut a little bit of an angle into the end. It slides over 2 O-rings. Then you have a ferrule and then the nut. So the nut clamps down on the ferrule, squishes everything tight, holds it in, and then the O-rings seal everything up. So I did a very similar, basically the same system in the previous shop with 1/2 inch. I decided to go ahead and step up to 3/4 inch since I needed to order a bunch of odds and ends to complete that system and put it in here. I figured we'd step up to 3/4 inch. I regretted it pretty much immediately when I did it in the other shop. So I was like, you know what? I don't want to regret this. I don't want to regret not going bigger. I want to have as much airflow as we can going all over the shop. Now it does always go down to a 3/8 inch hose. That's what we have, but at least having that volume to get it through those long runs. So we start routing this up. Now this is really easy and kind of annoying at the same time. So this stuff's flexible, but it definitely takes a lot of force to bend. And I didn't want to risk trying to measure and even playing it safe and, you know, adding a few feet onto my measurement, cutting it, and then having to deal with less weight, not having to tote the whole roll around, because I knew based on my rough math we were going to have just enough to get this done. So we get to the point where we need to tee it, and I went ahead and lubed the O-rings up. They just looked really dry, and if there's anything I've learned from working on cars, it's that you know, with injectors you always want to lube the O-rings, and with pretty much anything that slides over an O-ring you want to lube it up, because if it's dry it can pop it out of socket, it can tear it. Very important. So I went ahead and just lubed all the O-rings. It made this thing go together like butter. But we get it cut where we want it, where we want to put our T, and then we continue on. So we're going to have a T going forward and then this pipe continuing over. So we just need to get this hung up. Now, it comes with these little clip clamps, but I didn't like the idea of it hanging from them. It just pops into them. And with it being under the pipe, and that's what's holding it on, I decided to use P-clamps just for a little added security, knowing that it's not going to jiggle around, it's not going to fall off, I'm not going to have any issues like that. So I finished up that first run, got it down to itch drop, and then now it's time to start going forward. So again, pretty simple process. The hardest part is just dealing with that roll, because it's so stiff that as you're trying to kind of manipulate the pipe and get it straight and get it clipped in where you want it, that whole roll is dancing around and it just wants to fall down on you, and that's really the most annoying part in that, and trying to keep it perfectly straight as you go down, because every time you unwind that roll, it puts a little bend here or there, and it's easy to get them out, but you can end up chasing your tail a bit. So we get it ran down, and what we decided to do was put a hose reel on the lift in between the two lifts. That would kind of give us access to air in that whole area working on the cars, and be able to have a decent amount of length going out the door to air up something outside. So I get the drop screwed in for that. Josue gets the hose reel on and gets it connected to the drop. And then we had one more thing to run. So I was going to use just a soft hose for this, but we had a few feet left of this hard piping and we had one more drop left. So I figured, why not? Let's just run the hard piping over to this last drop, put it in a better place, and then we've got it pretty much every which way we need it. So that one was a little tricky. I wished it was a little longer, but we got it done. Spent some time with the pups, and we're ready to see if this works. All right, we got all of the hard piping done. Seeing it, I really wish we could get any other color. Unfortunately, it only comes in blue. Black or white would have been great. Even red, I would have taken red. I don't like red, see the red hoses, but one of those things. Gotta live with it. So we got this curve nice and out of the way. We kept this level with this, so it looks all nice and continuous and still gives us plenty of room to get in here around the tire machine to access everything. So this is essentially just the tire machine's drop. The hose is threaded into here, and then we do have a quick disconnect on the tire machine, so we can disconnect it, not leave it charged up all the time. But that's essentially dedicated for the tire machine. Then we go up, over, we've got a T there. It comes down to this double. So at the double, we have a quick disconnect here to plug in, and mostly will be used for the bench, blowing stuff out, you know, if you cut a piece of pipe or cutting, grinding metal shavings. All that in theory should be done in this area and not make a mess anywhere else, and then we're able to easily clean it up. We got air, etc. So that's for there. We can add another one here if we feel the need to. I don't see why we would. And then we use the last scrap of the hard piping we had to bring it over to another drop over here. Now we're gonna hook a hose up like the tire machine is here. It's a 15-foot hose, and that's gonna connect to the bottle jack. We're gonna get an air over hydraulic bottle jack for the press brake, which will be life-changing. I have been waiting till we got in here and did all this hard piping to do that. That's gonna make bending stuff so much quicker. But then also be long enough to reach and get to the air over hydraulic ram for our tubing bender that we still need to build and set up. But so that'll be kind of dedicated for those two, and then you can still clip in there, table, or anything else back here. You can hook the hose up, bada bing, bada boom. So then, here it goes, down. There's a wasp party on it, checking it out, checking my work. Down over the rafters, snakes down here, tried to kind of match this conduit, that's why I did it that way. Comes down to that drop, which goes to our hose reel. We still need to adjust that stop. Now, this is not permanent. I know this looks ugly. We're just waiting on a couple adapter fittings to finish up that drop to those things and finish this. This will be hard plumbed in with a 90. It'll look much cleaner. We just didn't have the right combination of adapters. So as of right now though, it's all sealed up. It's not finalized. Again, waiting on a couple adapters to finish everything out, but it's fully plumbed, it's fully tightened. So we're gonna try to fire up the compressor, put some air to it, and just see if it works. 100. All right, well, we're up at 145 PSI. Everything seems to be holding true. Don't see the pressure dropping, don't hear a peep from anywhere. Got air to all our things. Job done. Very satisfying. We'll have to leave it on all day. We'll leave it pressurized one day, all day, and just make sure it doesn't drop. Because sometimes you won't hear a leak, but you'll have a slow leak. The old shop, I had it dialed where there was no leak. You could leave the compressor on for months if you wanted to, which you shouldn't do. And it would never kick on because it would never drop down. So I want to make sure we're that dialed, but really happy with this. We've got air where we need it. I thought about doing a drop there and a drop there, and realized that, you know, we don't use air all that often. So yeah, anyway, that's that. I think with that, I got a couple little small projects to do. I need to put fluid in the lift, cycle it up, get it primed so it's ready to go. The electrician will be back tomorrow to tidy up the last couple of things, and then we'll be done with that. And then it's time to get back to working on the cars. There's plenty more I'd love to do. This is my favorite thing ever, is doing this kind of stuff, but we need to get this car ready to go testing. So we're gonna have to take a break from the shop stuff and you know, gather some parts and pieces in the meantime, and then I'm sure we'll be tinkering with this just like a race car for till the end of time, changing stuff. But I'm real excited to get into the cabinets and organizing and all that. Also, side note, brush seals and insulation definitely doing their job. So normally with it, I would come in here in the mornings and it would be at about 75, you know, if I had it set at 72, 73. And if I cranked it and had it, you know, almost full blast, it would get down to like 72, 73. Whereas today I came in with it barely running like this and it was 71. And it was scorching hot today. So that definitely made a huge difference, like noticeable from one day to the next. That helped a lot. I mean, as you would expect, but it's always nice for your the work to be validated by some results. So I'm gonna quit jibber jabbering. I'm gonna let you guys go. But thanks for watching. I hope to see you next time if you want. Yeah, for now, that's it. Okay, goodbye.